Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Rigel. This is Liberty Forge. Very excited you're here. You're with me on my first show. I am still figuring out this video thing, but it's been a lot of fun so far. So you guys bear with me as I figure things out and the channel matures. Thanks again, and thank whoever sent you. I'm sure you didn't find me by accident, but that will change over time. We are going to get into a little bit of a DEI interchange between Dr. Phil and this DEI advocate that he had on his show. Ben Shapiro breaks down very briefly what he thinks about it. I like Ben. Him and I obviously differ on some things, given that I kind of reject the state, being an anarcho-capitalist, and Ben obviously is more just kind of full-blown conservative. But you can still appreciate people for the good they have, for the things you do have common ground on, and makes us more persuasive if we start from what common ground we have with individuals, especially as we're going into discussions, and if we're trying to spread liberty. It's always good to start there and appreciate what the other side has to offer, even if you don't agree. So we're going to take a slice of that here, listen to Ben, and see what he has to say about this exchange between Dr. Phil and this DEI advocate. So let's get to that.
Some demographics come to the table and have to overcome racism, unconscious bias, misogyny. And so how do we help level the playing field for everyone?
Okay, so that means you're trying to create equality of outcome. Mm-hmm. That's what I hear you saying about playing God. Yeah. How do you create equality of outcome when people aren't the same? You're right. Some people are shorter, some people are taller looking over that fence. They can't both play in the NBA.
Right.
You can't create equality of outcome. What gives a DEI program the right to come in and try and alter the nature of things to create equality of outcome? That's been tried. That didn't work. That was called Marxism.
That obviously is true. Also, DEI is based on a fundamental lie, which is that inequality of outcome is based on the evils of the society, as opposed to, differences in ability, differences in efforts, differences in qualities.
Yeah, indeed, right? What's more obvious than people are different and have different skills, interests, heights, shapes. From just a common sense perspective, wherever you side on from a political perspective, it would seem that just our basic reason would lead us to that conclusion. People are different, and we're not all going to end up at the same place. Even if we go to the same school, we have similar backgrounds, from the same race. Individually, we're going to have different priorities, and that's going to change our behavior, and that's going to ultimately result in a different outcome. And even if you had the same priorities and the same, I would argue, let's say twins, like maybe that's not the best example, but I mean, I would argue even twins have different outcomes. I don't know. I haven't studied that, but you have different physical conditions that, also differentiate you from someone else, even though, let's say, you are from the same socioeconomic background, the same race, the same gender, the same, all that stuff. So, it kind of, so really what is at the very nature of these sort of programs or ideas, DEI as a basic concept? It's, trying to repair the wrongs of history, essentially, because whether you look at, let's say, the perspective of slavery, you're looking back several hundred years, and then you're trying to do like a traceability study on, well, who was victimized at what point and to what degree there, and then let's assume that you could even identify that correctly and precisely. Then you're going to have to centrally plan outcomes, right? And in doing so, you're going to create negative externalities that are going to be far worse than really just leaving the past in the past. So it's really a bad idea. Although I think for most people, it comes from a good place. I think a lot of people I think they are conditioned, especially at school, into believing these things. But I do genuinely feel that people don't believe these things, at least the average person, because they want Joe, who's more qualified, let's say, to not get a particular role on the basis of DEI. I think they're favoring more. They want DEI because they want to try to repair the past. And that you can argue is at least a noble idea, and the concept of being compassionate. But it's also a terrible idea from an economic perspective, from a moral perspective, because you're essentially making something that's unequal equal by force. So there's a breakdown in, I think, a little bit of common sense when we try to force a square hole through a square peg through a circular hole or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what else can I say? It's fundamentally flawed because the results of DEI create negative externalities, right? That are far worse than just leaving things be, especially in a country where I would argue that, we're not totally free, right? But, we have to have a sense of proportion about things. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. I'm very pragmatic. So yes, I reject the state. I think the market could do just about everything better than otherwise would be. Okay. Robert Higgs famously said that, we'd be fools to think we'd have heaven on earth if the state was gone tomorrow. There's bad people and there's things that we got to do about those bad people. I think that there's will be a market for security and so on, where we'll have an avenue for addressing things like that. However, pragmatically, it's not going to happen tomorrow. The state's going to probably exist till, I'm dead. And, we have to be proportional in our approach. So we want to inch closer and closer to a freer society. And that's really the whole point of this entire show, is to sort of break down these topics and try to help people understand them from that libertarian lens, or from that, from the lens of, freedom, and to help people persuade others into seeing things that way. And yeah, maybe through the democratic process, if we have enough people that are interested in these ideas and see them for what they are, maybe we'll have better outcomes in terms of who gets voted in, and maybe we could erode the amount of government and intervention in our lives over time. That is, of course, the libertarian dream. Some people in my circle would argue that, through the state's not possible. I happen to be one of those people, but it's kind of like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Certainly the state is probably only going to keep growing. But at the same time, short of something revolutionary, which, is unlikely, the state and the democratic process that we have in the U.S. at least is a kind of a reasonable approach, given it's all we have. So Walter Block, he's an ANCAP, Austrian economist over at Loyola, I believe. I think it's in New Orleans. And he very infamously, 2 election cycles ago, voted for Donald Trump. He was an ANCAP. People called him out. I'm sure I'll get called out. That's fine. One thing is what you believe and a target, and another thing is where you're at and where you can reasonably target next. So, I work at a factory, and I have to hit certain targets. My team has hit certain targets. I love to hit 100%. I would love to hit 100% every day. But right now I'm targeting 85%. And if I get 80, I'm happy. So the idea is to get better, to get closer, and I think that's that's a sense of proportion I want to have in terms of how we look at things. So we could talk about theory and where things can go, and and where they should be, and where we also have to be real and baseline. Well, here's where we are. Here's where we want to go. Be a little more scientific about it, and work with what we have. So I don't think there's anything inconsistent or hypocritical about that from an anarcho-capitalist perspective. And if you think that's wrong, that's okay. Tell me about it in the comments. So breaking it down again and summarizing, what is wrong with DEI? It's not that we should ignore the past in terms of acknowledging what happened and maybe learning from it as individuals. That's fine, but trying to correct what's happened in the past, especially things that happened generations ago, for the sake of trying to make things equal, carries negative externalities that create worse outcomes than just leaving them alone, because central planning leads to failures. And we can get into why that is, but essentially it has to do with distorting price signals in the market, and that's kind of the basis for how the economy works and how people make decisions, and how, through the spontaneous order, resources are allocated efficiently where they're needed. And we'll get into that some other time. So I'm gonna keep it short before I mess up, because I'm trying to just keep it to one take, and I do not want to do a lot of video editing. That does not sound like fun. I'm so glad you guys joined me. I feel pretty good about this first show. I am so glad you're here. Please like and subscribe. Support the channel. I am going to be trying to make as much content as I can. A couple shows a week. I have political discussions, guests, maybe do some debates, and anything else I can imagine. So thank you so much, guys. I will see you guys later. This is Rigel on Liberty Forge.